I think there's not enough spaces in the world where mob can come in and just be their full selves and shop up and find something about their culture that they can be really proud about.
It is an educational hub. It's a meeting point. It's a destination place.
It is more than just a retail space. It's a space that genuinely centres Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in an industry that almost never does.
Political fashion to me is such a powerful tool of being able to express yourself to the world and tell people and community where you're at without having to open your mouth.
They're not just slogans, they're call to actions, and it's worked for us.
Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Sarah Sherry, and we're recording today on unceded sovereign Wurundjeri country. Today's conversation is really special and, to be honest, a little bit emotional. I think we're all going to be doing well if we don't get through without bursting into tears, actually. It's Ebony's last week with us, and after 6 years in our retail space, Eb's moving on to some new adventures, and we're really excited for her. But 6 years of conversations at the counter, 6 years of holding space, and 6 years of building something that we refer to at Clothing the Gaps as being our safe Blak retail space. So today I'm joined by Laura Thompson. Laura's, as most of you would know, is the co-founder and CEO of Clothing the Gaps. You're a proud Gunditjmara woman. And Ebony Popple, a current retail manager at Clothing the Gaps for a few more days, who's Bundjalung woman, and has been one of the people most responsible for shaping what our retail space actually feels like. So this episode really isn't about clothing. It's about what it means to build a space that genuinely centres Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in an industry that almost never does. We've shaped this episode around 4 key takeaways about Blak retail, the things that we want you to walk away actually understanding. So let's get into it. With 4 key takeaways, our first one is, can I wear that? And it's a system that we built to answer a question that we got so much. Our DMs were filled with it. And for me as a non-Aboriginal person, I can really understand where this question comes from a place of not wanting to get it right, be supportive. But the question really went like, I'm a non-Aboriginal person and I'm really supportive, but I just want to know whether or not I can wear the things. And in the store, Eb, that's one of the questions that I would imagine that you get at the counter and around on the shop floor so much. How do you answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, like you said, it's a question we get all the time. So just acknowledging that it's a safe space for people to ask those questions. Can I wear that? So I guess in store and online, Clothing the Gaps, we have a tagging system, which we're really proud about. Customers can come in and look out for the ally-friendly or mob-only logos, and that really helps steer and navigate their purchases to make sure it's appropriate for what they're wearing and, yeah, they're able to speak on the garment they're maybe purchasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Laws, when we made that tagging system, did you think it would make the difference that it actually make? Like, what happened when we did that?
Oh, it was, people thanked us. They were like, thank you for allowing me to shop with confidence. I want to wear my values and now I can feel like I can do that respectfully. It was a real game changer in our business, actually. We saw an increase in sales and I didn't realise actually how much it was needed, that how many people were actually wrestling with that decision. Can I wear that? You know, people were just actually waiting for permission that for us come in the form of a ally-friendly and mob-only tag or symbol that allowed them to show their support for First Nations people.
Yeah, and I guess that's speaking a lot to like the non-Indigenous experience of walking into the store as well. What about for mob? What do you think having a mob-only range means for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? Ev, you're wearing one of the mob-only tees today, a sovereign tee. Tell us about the mob-only rack in store and those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel so proud that I've been able to work in a space that has a mob-only collection. It's something that's really spotlighted in the space. I know for myself as an Aboriginal woman, I definitely feel really seen and heard in the world when I can go in and shop and wear something really proud that celebrates who I am as an Aboriginal woman. So like you said, Says, I've got the sovereign tee on today, but from our mob-only collection and a piece that we have spotlighted in the retail space is a Shades of Deadly range, and it's one of my favourite pieces because this particular campaign was one of the first mob-only pieces that Clothing the Gaps had released, and I'm really happy that this particular campaign talks about challenging stereotypes and celebrating identity. So Yeah, I think for myself as an Aboriginal woman to have a particular section in store where I can shop up and, wear something to be proud of who I am, I think that's really important and special.
I think sometimes it's okay to have some ranges or products that are just for mob. And I think as we see an increase of Indigenous fashion that's accessible and being worn, which is what we want by the whole of community, we're literally uniting people through fashion and a cause. Seeing First Nations people in our mob-only collection is an identifier that that's mob because, for example, our sovereign range, if you're not a First Nations person to this country, then it would make sense if you're wearing that sovereignty, right? So it's really, it's a nice identifier, especially as we see an increase of people wearing Indigenous fashion. Like back in the day, if you saw someone wearing a mob tee, you would assume that they were mob. At this day and age, I don't think you can.
Yeah, it's a really good point of a lot has changed in the accessibility to First Nations design and fashion and protest tees as well, I would say. I think you're so right. Before you really had to either work in a space or be mobbed to get that tee, whereas it's completely different now. I think it's a really good step in unlearning access and thinking about what allyship in action looks like. When we do talk about the ally-friendly range, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's on the tag about talking about wearing the tees just the first step?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of the pieces at Clothing the Gaps, especially for first-time shoppers, it's a great starting point for customers to come in and engage and proudly wear a piece that celebrates Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. But it is really a starting point for allyship as well. So when you're in the space, ensuring that customers are engaging and, trying on a piece that they feel well equipped and comfortable enough to talk about out in community and out in the world, I think that's really important.
Essentially, like when you wear a Clothing the Gaps tee, you're a walking billboard and we set you out into the world to have conversations with those people around you. And for us at Clothing the Gaps, I feel like we dress all the cool kids. No, we dress a lot of people who have a more progressive mindset and that are supportive of First Nations people and causes. But when you wear that tee, you are signposting what you value, and it does open you up for conversations and some of those that are not so easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ebony and the retail team do a really great job of finding out a little bit more about the person. It's almost a little bit like a matchmaking scenario where you have to understand where they work, what do they do, what kind of conversations have they been involved in before, do you own any other Aboriginal brands? And then you do this beautiful process where you guide them perhaps to a range or a selection of T-shirts that are not just the right design, cut, colour, shape for them as a person, as a wearer, but about what conversations they're ready, willing and able and a right for them to have. If they've just sort of started thinking about what this looks like for them, a treaty tee may not be the tee for them. Maybe it's the black love tee with some cute little love hearts and then they can, step their way up. Or maybe it's just a pin or a cup or something. But I think you do a really, really great job at that because there's a spectrum of conversations, I guess, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think one of the first things that myself and I know that the team in the retail space do, we always are really curious. Is hey, have you shopped with us before? Have you been here? How can we help you today, navigate the space? Is there something in particular you're looking for? Is there a design that you're really drawn to? And I think being along the journey with that customer while they're in the space is so important to understand where they're at with activism, what conversations they're well and equipped to have, all of those things. I think we get to learn that in the retail space, which is really exciting. Yeah.
What do our customers, our community care about? If they're coming in and it's in the lead up to Jan 26, we'll often talk about a Not a Date to Celebrate campaign and say, why don't you wear this tee on Jan 26? I think a lot of that political messaging and our designs come from campaigns or situations or causes that we care about. And if we can find out what our community cares about as well, we can sell them, like Sez said, match them with the right tee
Yeah, for the conversation that they're ready to have, we'll often talk about that there's many on-roads onto the highway of social change, and finding the right piece for the right person in that moment of time is so important. And I think that's probably that second part to that question of, can I wear that? And then what am I ready for? What conversations are people ready to have, especially for non-Aboriginal people? All right. Takeaway number 2. Are we ready? Our second takeaway, when we were reflecting about the million and one things that we could have talked about today, was what a safe Black space actually looks and feels like. Thinking about it beyond this idea, but an experience that's lived and feels real and is real. Eb, if you were explaining what the Clothing the Gap's retail space, being a safe Black space, feels like to somebody, how would you describe it?
That's such a great question. I think for me, the Clothing the Gap's retail space is a connection place. I would honestly just call it almost like a cultural hub. It's a destination point for so many people, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. When they come to Naarm, they want to stop in and visit Clothing the Gaps. But I think it's a place of connection for a lot of people. And I think it's really lovely to have a physical store when people can come in, they can connect, they can get a feel of the products, they can try things on. But most importantly, they can hold space and conversation with each other. And also they can learn from each other about, what brought them in, what they're driven to do, what they're passionate about. I know for a lot of community members here in the Victorian Aboriginal community, it's a space where people come in and, are able to shop up with their family. It's a space where people can show up as who they are and be proud of that. I think there's, not enough spaces in the world where mob can come in and just be their full selves and shop up and find something about their culture that they can be really proud about to wear. And I think those spaces are so important. So I'm really glad that, the Clothing the Gap's physical store has that sense of belonging for people.
What about you, Laws? How would you describe it?
I would describe it as a place that centres mob first and foremost, a space that was created for mob. Mob's at the heart of the retail store, and it's a home we've created for mob, and other people are invited, non-Indigenous people are invited to come in. We have a massive neon sign as you walk in that says Womanjika, a Woiwurrung word that means come with purpose, and intentionally it's glowing in the building as a reminder that for non-Indigenous people, you're welcome here, but also come with the right intentions. And to be fair, the shop's red, black and yellow from the street. Most people can see very clearly. It's a really proud spot. It takes up space in Brunswick. It's, there's not very many shops that you can sort of, if you're going past in the tram and you spot Clothing the Gaps, you know what it stands for, right? There's always will be red, black and yellow everywhere.
There's flags hanging out.
Yeah, we've got the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander flag, the Pride flag, Womanjika's glowing, the building's red, black and yellow, I support tree. Like there's so many things that says this is a space that supports First Nations people. And as shoppers, as First Nation people who shop, we don't go into many other retail spaces where we feel like, hey, this is all about me. I can show up proud as a Black fella here, and I'm some of those stereotypes around, unfortunately, negative stereotypes about First Nations people in retail stores. That's not a thing in Clothing the Gaps. We celebrate First Nations people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the joy on your face, and for anyone who's listening from the audio version of this won't be able to see that, but yeah, I think that's so important of thinking about that it is first and foremost made for First Nations people, by First Nations people, and then everybody else is welcome if you come with the right intention. Flipping that narrative of what other mainstream retail spaces often look like is that it's for everybody else first, and then if if there's a great retail manager in there, then maybe it might feel a bit safer. But that's really not the case with us. Hey,
Well, you might get a little acknowledgement plaque,
Yeah.
which is better than nothing. As you come in, actually makes a big difference. In fact, that visual representation of things you can do in the shop to make it feel safer. And one of them is an acknowledgement plaque. We've got a giant one of those. It's about putting flags up. And one of the most, I think, important things we done earlier on was we always put First Nations people on our retail floor. That was really important to us, that to create a safe Black space, there's lots of things you can do to, decorate as such. But what we know creates the most difference is by having other First Nations people in those spaces to greet, serve you and connect with. And Eb's trained, I think, 27 people along, Indigenous young people along the way. And then I think maybe in the first year we decided to also put their mob name on their name tag.
Yeah.
What does that feel like, Eb, in the store when you got your mob name on your tag?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so special. It's so unique. I've never seen it anywhere else. And I know for myself, like when I come to work and I'm able to put my name tag on, but it also has Bundjalung, like that's who I am as, a strong Aboriginal woman. That's part of my identity. So I think, like you said, Laura, having Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander staff members is so important, but also for those staff members to be proud of who they are and their full self at work is, so great. It's lovely to be celebrated at work, because I don't think all retail spaces are like that, unfortunately.
And then when you have other mob come into the store, they're like, oh, are you Bundjalung?
Yeah.
I'm Bundjalung, or do you know so-and-so? It's just such an easy way to build connection straight up.
I think from like all aspects, whether it's the staff members, engaging with customers, you said before, Laws, like who is better to tell those stories of the pieces than Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people themselves? But even from a customer lens too, whether people are coming in with their whole family, people are coming interstate. We've had elders in the space so much in the past. There's always space for people to come in and, spend time and shop up. So,
we've got couches.
Yeah.
Free colouring in, toys, magazines. Like the whole shop is filled with other educational pieces, including QR codes, an iPad that's always got a campaign that we're featuring and highlighting, an opportunity to sign a petition in the space. It's not just a shopping experience, it is an educational hub. And like Eb said, it's a meeting point. It's a destination place.
Eb, I wanted to chat to you a little bit about what those conversations at the counter look like when you've been able to guide somebody through the process. You've worked out through the conversations that you've had with them around the tagging system, more often not before they get to the counter, whether or not they're mob or whether they're a non-Indigenous person buying an ally-friendly piece. I want to chat a little bit about the pricing structure that we have at Closing the Gaps and how we've built this in for a really long time now of our mob discount. Why do you think a mob discount's important, and what does that feel like at the counter?
Yeah, absolutely. Mob discount is so important, and I think at Clothing the Gaps as a Black business, it's something to be really, really proud of. It's great. I love that, no matter who comes in and shops up, every single person that checks out at Clothing the Gaps, we ask that question. Were you Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander? We offer a mob discount here. And I think that's something to be really proud of. When we've done the training with the staff over the years, I think it can feel like a daunting question, but also it's something, to be really proud of. And I'm glad that as an Aboriginal business, we offer that at Clothing the Gaps as well. I think it really shows that we centre community.
Why do you think, what do you think that experience is for mob when they get to the counter and they get asked that, Eb? Like, what happens then when you ask somebody if the mob discounts for them?
Yeah. Oh, I feel like we've heard all different things over the years. We've heard lots of different things. I think, firstly, a lot of people, especially if they are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, they're really grateful. They're like, wow, you offer a mob discount. That's so deadly. There's also been times before where some mob are like, oh, that's great, you offer that, but I'm happy to pay full price. Thanks for the offer. And then for, I guess, any of our non-Indigenous customers as well, it really, I guess, normalises those type of conversations at checkout. It's something we will ask every single customer in store, no matter, where they come from, what they look like. We'll ask everybody. And yeah, I guess for maybe non-Indigenous people, the best way for them to reply in that moment I've found is, no, the discount's not for me, but thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So, people have responded in lots of different ways, but I think for Mob, it's something that they're really excited about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I am.
Well, what's the Mob discount? I feel like I need to say it.
Yeah.
It's 15% off. Like, it's not a huge amount, but it is, I guess...
It's an acknowledgement, really.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a way to let them know that, the stories and the campaigns we're talking about impacts on them personally and as a community.
Absolutely. And, we spent a really long time trying to work out how we implemented it. And it was so funny. It took us a while to, we always kind of had it. It kind of happened really informally at the counter. And then we finally worked out Shopify enough to make it happen, hey?
And now we tag, for those e-commerce nerds out there, we tag our customers as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander if we've worked in different ways to communicate with our community differently, how we prioritise them, new releases, all those things. So I'm really proud of the fact that we've been asking that question for so long now, that, we have our own mailing list of First Nations people that we can continue to centre through our communications, but also through, a discount on all our products.
Yeah, and we'll do fun things like Mob might get cheeky access to sales first, and new pieces, all those sorts of things, it is really important. And the way that we often talk about it is that, some things really are just for Mob, and that's how it should be, especially within an Aboriginal business. Which brings me to takeaway number 3, because quite clearly, if you haven't worked out already as you've been listening through our other 2 takeaways, that it is more than just retail. But that also comes with the invisible labour behind the counter, the emotional weight that, the job description, we try and cover it, but it never really can, I think. And it's the impact of the colonial load, I think, within the store is really important to talk about here. What do you think people, and perhaps more than likely non-Indigenous people, don't understand about what operating a safe black retail space looks like as well? What's the gap in, I guess, expectation versus reality for some people there?
I think we touched on it a little bit before when we spoke about, it's so much more than a tea. And I think when people go into retail spaces, they're shopping up and they can buy some, new shorts or a new hat or something like that. But at Clothing the Gap's, as a proud Aboriginal business, it's so much more than a tea. It's so much more than that. And I think that's because the particular campaigns or, the messages or the images attached to that particular piece has such a weight and a gravity to it, and so much power in that. So absolutely, there is a different kind of weight to black business and black retail rather than mainstream retail, I will say. I've worked in both. It feels personal, and it's not just a tea. There's so much more. It's what's happening in our communities. It's what's happened for years, It's what our people have protested about. It's lots of different things. And yes, we would get to have that transaction point with the customer, but they're also walking out and have that responsibility to, I guess, stand with First Nations people and keep showing up.
I think for our retail staff, if you compare it to, a job at Kmart, it's not just a transaction. One of our catchphrases is "wear your values," and those values and those campaigns relate deeply to the staff members themselves. What is happening in the world directly impacts every day on what the shop looks and feels like. And you just wouldn't get that in any other retail space. And it talks to the staff that turn up, because they don't just treat this like a job. They work at Clothing the Gaps because they care about First Nations justice, and they can see the work the brand's doing in contributing to that and progressing that. So they put themselves in these positions where they carry this emotional toll that goes beyond a transaction at the counter.
Absolutely. When we think back to different moments in time that really highlight this experience that you're both talking about, my brain goes straight to the day of and the day after the referendum, the voice referendum. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that looked and felt like in the shop, Eb? Because that's a bit of a wild time.
Absolutely. It really was. I think, like when I think back and reflect on that particular time, you know, the 15th of October, and it's like the day after, what that looked like for not only our community at work that we had, but for the wider Aboriginal community. I know from like the shop lens as well, like we didn't know that the referendum necessarily was happening that year. And then all of a sudden it was something we advocated for, you know, all year pretty much. It was from January right until October, until that moment when the rest of the country told us no. So after that, the aftermath of that, it was like after a whole team really striving, you know, to want to see that change and it to be pushed aside, it was, tricky. It was lots of different emotions to navigate. And I think for our whole team, especially working in a front of house capacity as well, like having to hold so much space for community members. And, you know, a lot of those community members that came in had been shopping with us for years and was just saying things like, I'm so sorry. But like you said too, says like if you've had sorry for the 15th time that day, it's like, where do you put that? So what we actually ended up doing to really care and look after the team's well-being at that time after the referendum was we ended up turning our Spotlight campaign kind of iPad into a bit of a spot for customers to really channel that energy. And we called it the good, bad and the ugly. And that was somewhere where if customers were coming in, it was just becoming a bit too overwhelming maybe for the team, that we were able to kind of say, hey, there's this spot that we've created and, you know, you can share your reflections here of how you feel about the referendum, that we can come back and look over when we've got the capacity. Because I think, like you said, Laura, it's so much more than, it just feels so personal for the team. And when those things happen, it's, I guess, tricky.
Hundreds of people contributed to the good, the bad and the ugly referendum, you know, I guess, survey or that we created. And it took 12 months for us to reread that on the end of, you know, in the lead up to the anniversary. I thought, okay, we're ready to, you know, hear what, you know, people have shared with us. It was a traumatic experience. It was a racist experience. The amount of trolling and awful derogatory comments we received online that were filtering and moderating in the back end. You know, to be fair, the shop space stayed a safe Black space for staff. It was just the emotional toll, and I don't think our customers and community that come in realise. It's just one story for them. They don't understand that, you know, what that looks and feels like for staff over and over again.
And it can feel, you know, almost like you're wanting to be supportive and share how much you were caring and you were, you know, as a non-Aboriginal person, I just want to let you know that I back you and I support you. And I can't understand as a non-Aboriginal person, but I can see that it's exhausting to continue to hear time and time again of just feeling like you end up patting somebody on the back and going off to the iPad. I think one of the things that, you know, that we've prioritised in trying to keep our staff safe, going back to remembering in a couple of takeaways ago, so all of our retail team are First Nations mob, they're often young as well, how we keep them safe and how we sustain the energy in that space is really important, and thinking about different tools and tactics that we've used over the last, 6 years of having the shop that we've also had to learn how to deal with better as well. has been really important. And I think the day after the referendum, when we put the good, the bad, the ugly, you can either scan the QR code and sit in the couches in the shop and type your story out, or you could do it at the iPad. It was incredible. Like, there were people who had just come in because they didn't know where else to go. They didn't really know what to do. They were feeling, and for non-Aboriginal people and for Aboriginal and Torres Islander people, they were feeling a bit lost, despondent about the whole situation. And to think that Clothing the Gaps was the place that they felt drawn to speaks volumes that it is more than just a retail space.
Also, sorry, Laws, I was just going to say, just touching on as well, I know after the referendum, we also, as like a business, we paused for a sec and we all came together. We had that day where all of us mob could kind of, debrief and yarn together. And I think that was really important, and shows and speaks that community care that happens. You wouldn't see that in another retailer space. You'd, get up on Monday, you put your uniform on and you'd go to work. But we kind of got that opportunity to really stop and, debrief.
And I think about how we survived, this awful time being at like the forefront of this in the shop was, one, we had incredible communities of supporters, but two, we had each other, having, a whole team of First Nations people there. We weren't alone in that. And I was really grateful in the aftermath of the referendum that I was surrounded by mob. And I thought about those companies and businesses where there was just only one Indigenous person in there and how that would have felt. We all had each other. And I think the fact that we have a team of First Nations people in retail, that is our superpower in how we're able to continue to show up, because all day long we're debriefing with each other about every experience.
I guess as well, and over like some of our learnings over the years, we found like how great signage is, like, those QR codes we've got all throughout the space where people can, engage with all the blogs, all of the education resources, they can sign the petition, all of those things. But it also is a really good backstop for our team to kind of channel that energy, say, hey, check out this QR code, you can learn more about what we do here. So it's that kind of that little spot for the team if they ever need to.
It's a really nice buffer. We have lots of, young staff who are, still at high school. And having those QR codes in, strategic spots allows them to not feel like they have to have all the answers all the time.
That's it. Putting some boundaries around what our retail team will be able to help you with, and some things that you might need to go and find out for yourself, essentially, is once you get past the welcome to our safe black space, there's no room for racism. And by the way, this is what the team can help you with, and this is what's on you, essentially, because the team are really awesome at helping trying to find different sides for you. But in terms of what you should include in your school curriculum, maybe try somewhere else.
I have to laugh about it, because what retail shop do you go into anywhere with these expectations to get educated by staff?
Nobody walks into Myer and says, can you tell me about the first person to own this building? No one knows the answer to that question. The questions that the retail team honestly get asked, we could spend a whole nother episode talking about those. So let's move on to takeaway number 4. And this, I was thinking about this, Laws, when you were talking about the day after the referendum as well, and what people chose to wear, because takeaway number 4 is, it is more than just retail. Eb, as you've said a lot, we are dressing the resistance. It is political fashion, and there is a responsibility that comes with wearing your values and being political. So I guess when we talk about political fashion at Clothing the Gaps, Eb, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it lets people know where I stand without even having to open my mouth. And I think we've just been chatting about, there's been a few times over the years where, maybe you need to wake up and you need to put on your not a date to celebrate tee. Or I know that's what I wore the day after the referendum, because I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone about this, but this tee is telling everyone exactly where I'm at. So yeah, political fashion to me is such a powerful tool of being able to express yourself to the world and tell people and community where you're at without having to open your mouth.
It was political fashion. It was merch with a message. is why we started Clothing the Gaps. It was never an intention, but the Free the Flag tee was the moment where we decided that we wanted to continue to create political fashion, tees that created conversations, that created action, and that led to outcome. When we spearheaded this Free the Flag campaign, supported by our community, and were able to see the flag being freed, that was such an important moment for all the team and for the brand. And they're not just slogans; they're call to actions, and it's worked for us.
Yeah, and I guess the action piece, I think, for me is the key word in that as well, is that it's not just putting on the tee and going about your day and that's enough, is that it's seeing somebody make eye contact at your T-shirt and taking that opportunity to have that conversation rather than shying away from that moment to share what your T-shirt is actually about. Like, I often use the analogy of, I have the same values, principles and ideas about the world, whether I'm wearing a political fashion T-shirt or whether I'm not. It's just that the political fashion tee makes that very, very clear with Eb, as you said, without having to even talk about what I want the world to look and feel like, and the conversations that I'm willing to have or to not have as well. And it changes the way that landscapes feel. Hey, Laws, like, how do you feel when you're walking down the street? Let's just say, we're in Collingwood. If you saw somebody walking down the street wearing, around Jan 26, wearing a Not a Date to Celebrate tee, like, how does it make you feel as an Aboriginal person?
Definitely safer. It changes the way the world looks and feels. And certainly in spaces where there's more people wearing Clothing the Gaps or Black fashion in general, and you see those messages, they feel like people around you care and you feel supported in that. Reflecting on the day post referendum, I went to a cafe and I remember clearly I saw someone in the cafe continuing to wear their Yes tee, and it just made all the difference, because the day after the referendum, I didn't know who voted no or not. So, wearing your values post-referendum was a way to create trust between me and society. And I think a lot of people felt like that. Like, the majority of people voted no. So how do we continue to talk to the people that said or voted yes, and who can we trust now? So certainly your clothes are able to signal your values, but also who you can trust. And
that visibility piece, I guess, where, you're out in the world and you see someone wearing a different piece from another Aboriginal business. I'm like, you're my person. I'm going to go and talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Eb, when it was the day that the 25th of January, when the Aboriginal flag copyright was announced to have been bought, when you woke up in the morning and saw that on social media, what did you think?
Yeah, I feel like that is honestly a moment that has stuck with me forever. I think I had been working at Clothing the Gaps for maybe like a year and a half just. And at the time when I first started, the biggest spotlight campaign we were selling was Free the Flag. So I remember waking up and, my first look at social media for the day was Aboriginal flag is freed from its copyright. And I just remember trying to put the puzzle pieces together to being like, oh my God, the power of political fashion is real. And that really kind of ignited the fire in my belly for me. Just seeing how, I guess, something that you can really advocate for so long, and then for things to be changed, it was, a moment that stuck with me forever. I still have my Free the Flag tee and try to wear it when I can. But I think, that was a really huge moment for a lot of mob, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, Laws, you're so right. I think the Free the Flag campaign was probably a really big switch for us at Clothing the Gaps, of understanding not just the power of fashion, but the power of the role of business within that as well. And that it was the fact that we were a business with independence and agility and the ability to run that campaign, or to lead that campaign in the way that you did, that made that difference as well.
Even for community too, even from a customer's lens too, all those people that bore the Free the Flag tee or the hat, and for that to be changed, it's wow, it really does make a difference, standing in solidarity and all of those things.
I think the more different people from different postcodes and different cultures that we get to dress, the better. That's what really excites me, is like going to somewhere I didn't expect, like out of this northern suburbs bubble that we exist in at Clean the Gaps, where it feels like Clean the Gaps is uniform. But you go to Queensland, for example, and you see Clean the Gaps. That's so exciting because we have these champions, legends, people who are wearing the values in spaces where it's not always safe, where the people around them don't think the same way, and they're influencing their circle of people. So the more people that we're able to pinpoint in all over the country and get them to wear their values, the more conversations we're having.
Absolutely. And I think, it's a really important reflection actually to bring up, in that wearing your T-shirt where it's expected versus where it's actually unsafe.
Yeah.
And it's a very different experience. And I often get really excited about when we get a new wholesaler as well in a space that isn't traditionally perhaps like a progressive, we can see lots of different information about different parts of the country, from, voting records and seeing stockists take up, space on their shelves in spots where it's probably really risky in their community. Like, I think that's so brave, just as individual people who, go to the supermarket, go to their little local IGA in a get up, stand up, show up T-shirt. Like, it's kind of terrifying.
But also, like, I think you're touching on that as well, Says. Like, certain days there's expectations that you might want to wear your values, like NAIDOC week, Harmony Day, Reconciliation Week, Jan 26. Eb, you'd know them well. They're our busiest times in retail, right? And the point that we want to make, and we say it all the time at Clean the Gaps, is to wear your values all year round. And I think having those conversations and wearing those clothes when people don't expect it is really important to the survival of our business, but also the future of this country. Is that, First Nations issues shouldn't be dealt with just in certain weeks of the year. It's ongoing, and they require ongoing conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. What you wear on Tuesday is just as important as what you wear on the first day of NAIDOC. And the opportunity to be active across all of those different times of the year is really, really important.
For sure. And I guess just touching on that too, Laws, I know we've spoken about it before, but, for maybe some of our customers, if they're not Indigenous, they have that opportunity at the end of their day to, take off their hat or all of those things. Whereas like for a lot of blackfellas, we're black all year round. We don't really have that privilege. So yeah, visibility matters, and it definitely creates a safer community.
It's a really good point, Em.
Eb, we're coming to the end of our chat together, and I wanted to ask you, 6 years is a really long time. What's one moment or one feeling that you'll carry with you when you leave us at Clean the Gaps?
Oh my goodness. There's so many things that come to mind, but I think for me in this moment, as a proud Bundjalung woman, I grew up on country. I haven't always lived here in Naarm. So for 6 years to be welcomed and really held by the Victorian Aboriginal community has been so beautiful and something that will really stick with me forever. And I think having those connections and the network, is something that will really continue that fire in my belly as I step into the new chapter. More specifically, I would say working alongside other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people and being part of their journey and mentoring them. I think that's been a huge highlight of my career and my time at CTG. And yeah, it's something that I'm definitely going to miss about this special little pocket. Yeah.
Eb, we could also do like a whole nother podcast episode on the incredible like Google feedback that we get about Ebony. Ebony at the store was so lovely. Ebony helped me so much. I just wanted to say a big thanks to Eb. Like, I think the way that you have created a really beautiful space within the stores is absolutely second to none, and you should be really proud of that. And it's been really lovely since you let us know and let the team know that you were moving on to a new adventure. The reflections that have been coming from the team over the last little bit has been incredible as well. So I know that everybody's going to miss you, myself included. To everyone that's listening, that's ever walked in and, been made to feel right at home by Eb, from all of us, this is a massive thank you. Yeah. Everything that we've mentioned today will be in the show notes. From Laws and I, Eb, a very big thank you, and thanks for sharing all the things that you've learnt with us about creating a safe Blak space. See you next time.